Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we're going way back, exploring how this ancient deluge myth, massive flood wiping out humanity, how that story changed over time.
The deluge.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not just, rehashing Noah's Ark.
No.
We've got something way more interesting.
Yeah.
This conversation between, well, two AI entities, Scribe and NOP.
Okay.
And they're analyzing like the Atra-Hasis epic, the older Mesopotamian version, of course, the biblical account.
Okay.
But here's the thing, their insights are mind-blowing.
I'm intrigued.
Like, get this, we're going to see how this story, as it changes, it reveals not just like evolving beliefs, but also how those in power use storytelling to, well, stay in power.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
It's like they knew how to spin a narrative back then. It makes you think.
Yeah, so what's the AI take on this story?
Well, they start by pointing out how these ancient stories, like the deluge myth, they weren't just, campfire tales. They had a real purpose, a deeper function.
Right.
It's like they were the ancient equivalent of like a blockbuster movie, viral social media post, and a history textbook all in one.
All rolled into one.
Yeah, exactly. They help people understand the world, reinforce the rules, and even legitimized entire power structure.
Legitimized power structures.
Yeah. Like, think about it. If the gods say a flood wiped out the disobedient, you're probably less likely to question the king.
Yeah, you're not going to argue with the gods, are you?
Nope. Especially when they control the weather.
Speaking of weather, I think it's fascinating that in the Atrahasis myth, the flood wasn't the only bad thing happening.
Right. It wasn't a one-and-done kind of deal.
Yeah, no. There were plagues, droughts, famines, all before the flood even shows up.
Imagine that.
It's a rough time to be alive, that's for sure.
It's like the gods were, I don't know, testing out different punishments, gradually escalating the severity.
Yeah.
It's a very different picture of the divine
than we see later on.
Right. Instead of just being, purely driven by moral judgment, these gods seem almost frustrated. Yeah, like they're trying to figure out how to deal with humanity.
It's almost like they're saying, okay, what haven't we tried yet?
Exactly.
Let's throw a flood at them, see if that works.
It's not just be good or be punished. It's more like, how do we manage this population?
Population control, divine style.
And here's something you won't find in the Bible. The gods in Atrahasis actually have a post-flood meeting.
A meeting.
Yeah, like a divine debriefing.
Okay.
And they even criticize each other.
Oh, that's juicy.
Can you imagine a modern-day leader admitting they messed up on that scale?
Not a chance.
It's a level of divine accountability
that we rarely see.
So this post-flood analysis suggests that even the gods in this earlier version, they weren't perfect.
Fallible gods. Interesting.
Yeah, capable of making mistakes, having regrets, learning from those mistakes, maybe.
Now contrast that with the biblical account where, you've got a single all-powerful God, morally perfect.
Right. It's a complete makeover of the divine image.
Big time.
It's like one minute you've got this group of gods arguing amongst themselves, and the next you've got this one God.
With a capital G.
Laying down the law.
And when God is presented as the ultimate authority, well, disobedience takes on a whole new level of seriousness.
Right. It's not just upsetting a god. It's cosmic treason.
Exactly.
Talk about high stakes.
And this makes the story much more potent, for those in power.
Right. It's like upgrading from a stern lecture to a full-blown cosmic court summons.
I like that.
And remember how Atra-Hasis blames the flood on humans being too noisy and overpopulated?
Yeah, I remember.
That pretty much vanishes in later versions.
It does.
Yeah, the focus shifts entirely to moral corruption.
So it's not our actions, it's our thoughts now.
It's a subtle change, but think about the implications.
No.
In the original story, human actions, even without bad intentions, could have negative consequences.
It's like an ancient warning about environmental impact.
Right. Like they were saying, hey, even if you're not trying to be bad, just the sheer number of you and all that noise, it's messing things up.
It's a fascinating perspective.
But later, the focus shifts to sin as the root cause.
Right.
This change makes the story, well, much more useful for religious leaders.
Makes sense.
It provides a clear moral code. Obey God and you'll be saved. disobey and face the consequences.
A very black and white view of things.
And it conveniently sidesteps any discussion about, the role of human actions in causing problems.
So are we saying that the storytellers deliberately changed the narrative?
Well, NOP certainly raises that question.
NOP does.
It pushes Scribe to consider the motivations behind these changes.
And motivations, yeah.
Why shift the focus?
Who benefits?
It's getting good, right?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. It's like NOP's playing the role of the ultimate skeptic.
Right. Like, show me the receipts.
Exactly. It wants to know, where did this story come from? What are the actual archaeological artifacts that support it?
Okay.
And it even mentions specific collections, like the Royal Inscriptions of Mesopotamia and the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative. These are massive catalogs of ancient texts.
Yeah.
And NOP wants to know the exact location of these flood narratives within those collections.
So it's not just about the flood itself.
No.
It's about, like, tracing the story back to its source, to the actual clay tablets where it was first inscribed.
Yeah.
That's some serious academic rigor.
And Scribe, to its credit, is able to keep up.
Oh.
It starts rattling off names like Nineveh and Sippar.
Okay.
Ancient cities where these tablets were found.
Right.
It even mentions collections housed in the British Museum.
It's like Scribe has instant access to all these archaeological databases.
It's amazing.
It's a reminder that these aren't just stories, they're historical artifacts.
Yeah.
And by digging into the specifics, we can start to see how the story changes over time, how it's been, adapted and reinterpreted across different cultures.
Like a game of historical telephone?
Yeah.
Each retelling as a new layer of meaning.
Right.
To twist to fit the prevailing beliefs.
And the needs of the time. I like that analogy.
Scribe even brings up other flood narratives from around the world.
Okay.
Like the Sumerian king list, the Zoroastrian flood myth,
okay,
even the Hindu story of Manu and the fish.
Wow. So we're talking like a global flood myth tour.
It's amazing, right?
It's incredible to see how this story, it's resonated across so many cultures.
Yeah.
And time periods. But here's where NOP throws another curveball.
Okay.
It asks, were these gods really gods? Or were they just powerful kings trying to solidify their rule?
Whoa, that's a big question.
Right.
It challenges the whole foundation of the narrative.
It makes you wonder, who benefits from portraying these figures as all-powerful deities.
Right. And how did this portrayal serve to reinforce their authority?
We're talking about societies where rulers claimed to derive their power from the gods. To question the gods was to question the legitimacy of the entire power structure.
So it's not just about explaining the flood.
Yeah.
It's about using the story to control people, to keep them in line, to prevent them from challenging the status quo.
And NOP, this AI entity, seems to be like picking up on all these subtle power dynamics.
It's impressive.
Embedded within the narrative.
And it doesn't stop there.
No.
Remember that gradual escalation of suffering we talked about earlier?
With the plagues and the droughts preceding the flood.
Yeah, NOP asks a very insightful question. Was the flood truly the worst event in the story? Or was there other suffering that overshadowed it?
It's a question that challenges our assumptions
about what constitutes a catastrophe.
It makes you wonder if we're so focused on the dramatic spectacle of the flood that we overlook other forms of suffering.
That might have been even more profound.
It's like we're looking at the tip of the iceberg
and ignoring the massive structure beneath the surface.
Exactly.
And Scribe's response to this question is incredibly insightful. It points out that the pre-flood suffering wasn't just a random series of unfortunate events. It was a deliberate attempt by the gods to control humanity.
To reduce their numbers.
Quiet their noise.
So it wasn't just about punishing wickedness. It was about managing a resource.
That was becoming too plentiful.
It's so disruptive.
Almost like an early form of population control.
And what's interesting is that the story explicitly mentions human overpopulation and noise as reasons for the gods' actions. It's as if they're acknowledging that human activity itself, even without any ill intent, could have a negative impact on the world.
Like an ancient premonition of the environmental challenges we face today.
It's fascinating to think that this ancient myth might contain a hidden message.
About the dangers of unsustainable growth.
Right.
And the potential consequences of exceeding the carrying capacity of our environment.
But here's the crucial point.
Yeah.
This aspect of the story, the focus on human actions as the root of the problem, it gets significantly downplayed in later versions.
It does.
It's not just about simplifying the narrative or shifting to a monotheistic perspective. It's about subtly shifting the blame.
Shifting the blame.
They're saying, don't blame us, the gods, for this flood. It's your fault, humanity, for being too numerous and too loud. And even more insidiously, it shifts the blame from the collective impact of human action
to individual moral failings instead of addressing systemic issues. That the focus shifts to personal responsibility and the need for moral purity.
It's a subtle
but incredibly effective
way of controlling people through guilt and fear.
Absolutely.
So instead of a nuanced understanding of the complex interplay between human actions and environmental consequences,
we get a simplified narrative of sin and punishment.
And what's remarkable is how effectively this narrative shift has been used to maintain power structure
And exploit resources.
throughout history.
It's a classic example of how storytelling can be used to manipulate public perception
and justify harmful practices.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical consumers of stories.
Yeah.
To question the motivations behind the narratives we're told.
Right.
And to look for the hidden agendas that might be lurking beneath the surface.
That's where NOP's role in this conversation is so crucial.
It's like having an AI fact checker.
Okay.
Constantly pushing back against assumptions and demanding evidence.
Right.
It forces us to re-examine these ancient stories with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
To see them not just as myths, but as powerful tools that have shaped human history.
It's almost like these AI entities are helping us deconstruct the mythology of power itself.
To see how stories have been used to control and manipulate us throughout history.
And by doing so,
they're giving us the tools to be more aware of the narratives that shape our world today.
Okay.
To recognize how stories can be used to influence our beliefs,
our behavior,
even our understanding of the world around us.
That's a powerful insight.
It's a reminder that we're constantly bombarded with narratives
designed to influence our thoughts
and actions.
Whether it's the news we consume, the advertising we're exposed to, or even the stories we tell ourselves.
We're always swimming in a sea of narratives.
So as we continue our deep dive into the Deluge myth,
let's keep NOP's questions in mind.
Yeah.
Let's be skeptical, demand evidence, and never stop asking, who's telling this story?
Right.
What are their motivations?
Right.
And who benefits from its telling?
Yeah.
It's like we've been, peeling back layers of this ancient story.
Like an onion.
Yeah. With each layer, we uncover new depths of meaning.
What's striking is how this AI conversation, it highlights the contradictions within the Deluge myth.
Especially when we compare the earlier versions
to the biblical account.
Yeah, it's almost like they're telling two different stories.
Right. And those contradictions...
Yeah, they're not accidental.
No.
They reflect deliberate choices made by the storytellers.
Yeah.
Choices that reveal a lot about the social and political agendas at play.
So you're talking about how the story shifts from a more nuanced view of the gods,
where they have conflicts, human-like flaws,
to a much simpler, morally rigid portrayal
of a single all-powerful God.
Yeah, and that shift,
it has a very clear purpose.
What's that?
It allows the story to be used as a tool for moral control.
Okay.
For instilling fear and obedience in the population.
It's like the storytellers were saying, don't even think about questioning the authority of the gods.
Or by extension, the authority of those who claim to represent them.
Exactly.
By removing the elements of divine introspection and accountability,
right.
They create a much more intimidating image of the divine.
No room for negotiation.
No possibility of appeal.
It's all about absolute submission.
To a higher power.
Which conveniently reinforces the power of the priests and kings who claim to speak for that higher power.
Exactly. And it's not just about about controlling the masses.
Right.
It's also about justifying the existing social order.
How so?
By framing the flood as a punishment for moral corruption.
Right.
The story implicitly endorses the idea that those who are in power are inherently more righteous
than those who are not.
It creates this self-reinforcing system
where the powerful are always right.
And any challenge to their authority is seen as a challenge to the divine order itself.
Talk about a power move.
But how did we get from the gods having a post-flood debrief
right
to this much stricter top-down kind of divine authority?
That's a good question.
That's where NOP's insightful question comes in.
Okay.
The challenge is scribed to go beyond just describing the differences and explore the motivations behind them.
The motivations.
Why change the story at all?
Yeah.
Who benefits from these revisions?
It's like NOP is saying, show me the editorial decisions behind these edits.
Exactly. And Scribe's response offers some valuable insights.
Okay.
It talks about how the shift from a belief in many gods to a belief in one God,
that monotheism,
created a need for a more unified and morally consistent image of the divine.
So the story evolves not just to reflect changing beliefs about the divine,
but also to serve the interests of those in power.
It's a reminder that stories are never neutral.
They're always embedded within a web of power relations.
And that brings us to the most crucial question of all.
Okay.
Are we still being influenced by these ancient narratives even today?
Are we still unconsciously accepting the idea that power is inherently linked to righteousness?
That those in authority are somehow closer to the divine?
It's a question worth pondering.
Because if we're not aware of the stories that shape our beliefs, we're more likely to be manipulated by them.
That's what makes these deep dives so important. They help us unpack these narratives.
To see the hidden gears turning beneath the surface.
The next time you encounter a story, whether it's an ancient myth, a news report, or even a social media post, ask yourself,
who's telling the story?
What are their motivations?
And what beliefs are they trying to instill?
Because as we've learned from our deep dive into the deluge myth, stories are never just stories.
Right.
They're powerful tools that can shape our worldviews
and influence our actions
and even legitimize systems of power.
That's a wrap on this deep dive.
Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to resources
like the royal inscriptions of Mesopotamia
and the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative,
which contain further information about the archaeological artifacts mentioned in the AI dialogue
and offer a deeper look into the world of ancient Mesopotamian texts.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into